So we have this much done. We've darkened up some of the stuff that's going on back here, and I've added some darker values in the front mountain mass. So we're just going to continue to keep building up these glazes, these overlapping glazes, in order to create more depth. So I find it helpful to hold an image right next to the work surface. And when I do this flat, I'm getting a lot of glare. So let me see if I can prop this up a little bit so that it tilts and reduces the glare. That's better. So if I can put the image right next to this section, I see a lot of like more a reddish brown. And we mixed some colors in class together. We talked about how brown is red, yellow, and blue. And sometimes it looks more red, sometimes it looks more yellow, sometimes it looks more blue. Over here I've got some more, some brown that looks a little bit more red. So when I started with brown in the palette here, I added some of the vermilion red to get it more reddish looking. And if you have your sketchbook handy or a page of watercolor paper to test it out, I can kind of like hold it next to the picture and see if I've got the right kind of red. I'm gonna add a tiny bit more blue to that brown. I'm very picky about my colors. Maybe you're not. Yeah, a little bit. You know what? I'm gonna throw some purple in there. I think that's gonna do it for it. Yeah, that's really nice. So with that, I will try some dry brush. So I'm gonna get like the medium-sized round brush, dip that in there. And I'll get the brush to be a little bit more dry by stabbing at the palette, making the bristles kind of spread apart. And then I'll use the side of the brush, kind of lay it flat against the paper, and it's still kind of wet. Stab, 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 dry, dry. There we go. Really lightly brush it along the paper. So what I get is some more texture. So I can pick up some brown from over here. I can get some more brown from here. Hold the brush really lightly, and I see some darker areas. Add the darker brown on top. And I could keep going with it and add some more of these darker values. I have leftover paint from the other day here. If you don't, you might want to pause right here and mix some darker values, then come back. I'm going to keep going. So this is a really dark, dark greenish blue, and I want to do some dry brush again. Just stabbing at the palette. Hold the brush really lightly and get some of these darker colors to overlap. And some texture that I see in here is kind of, I didn't do it on the technique page, but it's called scumbling. where you're still kind of doing a dry brush thing by getting the bristles to spread apart. And then you can stab at the watercolor page to get a little bit more of that brush kind of looking bushes that are along the hills. So on top of the overlapping glazes, now I'm adding a little scumbling. Okay, now I can move on to another section and just keep building up these overlapping glazes until you are satisfied with what you have. I could overlap more on top of the water if I don't like how light this water looks. I can look at the background mountain range and maybe add a little scumbling on top of that, or even just adding some more dark values where I'd like to see it become a little darker along these ridges. I'm just continuing to build up overlapping glazes and darker values until you feel like you're finished.